Hello and welcome to the winter solstice edition of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and thank you very much for listening in. I love it as always. Days are starting to get a little bit longer now. Trees will slowly start waking up as the cold weather starts to break and there's more daylight around. And it's a nice, pleasant reminder for all of us that repotting of our trees is literally just around the corner. It's so close now you can almost smell the stale soil getting scraped out of those old roots and those scissors flying like crazy trying to cut them and shove the tree back in the pot before you can blink. So yes, it is time to be definitely ready for what's coming around the corner. And that's where I thought I'd talk about in this podcast a little bit about maintenance on bonsai. Having done a bucket load lately, I am still plucking needles. I am still cutting buds. I'm still wiring. I'm enjoying the World Cup, and I've been mixing soil for repotting. And it got me thinking about the reason, the true reason that you have to get into bonsai, and what you must love to be. I don't know if successful is the right word, but to thoroughly enjoy the hobby of bonsai. It got me thinking that it's not a lot artistic. a lot of it is grunt work. A lot of it is the hard stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And also want to talk. I've been doing a lot of work lately on a lot of different trees around different places around the country. It's up in Canberra recently, which was such a lovely time. So I'll talk more about that a bit later. But I want to talk about the direction of working. And that's your focus when you're working on certain areas of the tree. It's a little tip that may make life easier for you and make you more successful with the application of your technique. It might be just a little change in how you do things, like for instance how you hold a pair of tweezers. It can sound stupid, I know, but it honestly can make such a big difference for the end result of the quality of your work and also the speed in which you can work as well. So I want to talk through a few things there that may just provide a little bit of an insight as to what I do. All right, strap yourself in. Here we go. When you first got into bonsai, I'll talk about when I first got into bonsai. It was the initial thought of being a tree, you're designing a tree, and the artistic side of taking a piece of material, throwing a bit of wire at it, getting a chainsaw out and cutting a few branches off and whacking it into a little ceramic pot was called bonsai. And that was the part that was super exciting. And don't get me wrong, like I do absolutely love to my very core taking a piece of material and applying that first wire to it. I've talked about it a long, long time ago, but that being the one to put a tree on its path, I don't know if wire necessarily does that. The person who plants the seed sort of puts it on its path, but to put your thumbprint onto a tree and say, this is where this tree is going to go. If everything goes to plan and whatever, but that's the part I do seriously love it. And that's when I first, used my scissors in anger. That was the purpose. That was the focus. That was my intention. But as you get further down the bonsai rabbit hole, as you start digging a little bit deeper and cutting a lot more and getting more trees into the collection and doing all the stuff that we all do, you suddenly find out that artistic side slowly starts to disappear. It starts to diminish quite considerably. And, like where this came about was I was up in Canberra recently and working on a lot of trees for a long period of time, and you sort of get to the point where you're punching them out, and when you look at it, there's a little bit of fine tuning, but realistically, a lot of what you're doing, probably 95% of what you're doing, is maybe more, maybe 99% of what you're doing is maintenance work. you're cutting branches, you're plucking needles, and then right at the very end, you might, to bring the tree back into line, you might apply a little bit of wire and, push a branch here, push a branch there. You might look at something that's, too long, too thick, too coarse, remove it and punch the tree back a little bit, reduce that silhouette. But pretty much it's the maintenance. Like the tree was somewhere, it's grown and become a bit scruffy, and you want to put the tree back to where it was. Or you might have a younger tree that's taken a step forward and you're sort of getting to the next stage of the design. You've had a branch grow out and then you want to put that branch into the place that you want. So you put a little bit of wire on it, push it down, and the design side of things sort of starts to come into play. But really that design that you're doing at that point, I don't mean to burst anyone's bubble thinking that, if you've just got into bonsai, that it's all purely about designing trees. A lot of what you're doing is maybe following a path that was set somewhere in the past, and the opportunity to redesign bonsai, they're few and far between. If you, I say this with a bit of caution, because the redesign side of things really, as long as you're content with the tree design that you've got in front of you and you've kept things in mind like the bud conveyor and you've done the work along the path, then really there's not a lot of justification, unless you're unhappy with the design, there's not a lot of justification for that tree redesign, that bonsai redesign work, or getting in there with your branch cutters and saying, right, now, instead of going to the right, this tree is going to go all the way over to the left. There are circumstances, of course, where that happens, but the very vast majority of what you're doing is that maintenance work, and there's nothing wrong with it. I love the maintenance work, but I thought it would be nice to talk about it being realistic, because when you've got a job, when you're working for someone, and you have the honeymoon period where everything's roses, everything's great. It's beautiful. What a great job. Love the environment, love the people, love the job. It's, what I'm doing is perfect. It's great. It's exactly what I've been looking for. It's so much better than what I was doing in the past. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Same for all of us. Absolutely everyone listening to this podcast will have had these thoughts. And then all of a sudden you get to the point where, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 10 years, whatever it is, you're like, it's the same thing. Nothing's changing. Like, I'm doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm sick of Fred in operations. Oh God, the way he looks at me when I walk past, whatever it is, once the sheen comes off, once that glare of the initial design of the bonsai wears off, and it suddenly falls into a maintenance routine, like it's just that cyclical, it's grown, cut it back, put it in, repot it every 3 years, put it back in the pot, put it back on the bench. Yeah, it looks great. No, it's a beautiful tree. Yeah, perfect. Yep. No, won an award. It's, it's this, it's that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I do like that tree as well. You look at it and go, sort of, you're okay. And then you start trying to think of things that you can do to change it, to get that excitement back. And, what if I did this? What if I did that? And I know this goes on. It may not be necessarily now for you, or you might be going, I don't really feel that. I'm still loving that tree. Sooner or later it happens where you look at the tree and go, yeah, it's beautiful. And you might have, family or friends come through the yard and they'll go, oh, that's amazing. And you'll go, it's it is a good tree. Yeah. But you look at it 365 days a year. You've looked at it for the last, however many years, and you think back to when you were planning going from a grow tub or into a first pot and then to a second pot, and then you buy the ultimate pot, and it's like that's perfect for it. Now you look at it and go, yeah, it's a nice pot. It's just something that I think that you need to thoroughly wrap your head around, because, things like, I'm talking more and more about repotting because that's more and more a focus for what I'm doing, and I've spent days days taking different components and putting them into tubs and getting a shovel out and mixing them up and then putting them into bags and applying cable ties, getting ready for this repotting season. Now, without that grunt work, without that dirty, filthy side of bonsai, the beautiful side for me wouldn't happen. So, you've got to love all sides of it. You can't sit there and go, well, I don't want to make up soil. It's just going to take me hours. It's hard work. It's backbreaking. I'm not interested in that. Well, that's bonsai. For me, that's exactly what bonsai is. Investing time to mix soil rather than getting a raw piece of material and applying that first wire and giving it a path to be on. You have to do things like weeding. You have to get out there and pluck the weeds, because when you don't do those simple little things, the maintenance, the ugly side, of bonsai, you're not going to have the beautiful side. And once we get through repotting and the weather starts getting nicer for us here in Australia, well, for Melbourne, once other parts of the country are definitely much nicer and warmer than what we are. But once you start getting into that side of things, I get a bit of a shiver down my spine. It's a I wouldn't say it's exactly a love-hate relationship, but I know that when that warm weather gets here, I'm going to be flat out with my deciduous, with my maples, especially doing pinching work, which is just, it's never ending. And then, it's a sort of thing where you're out there for hours just pinching out the tips of growth to get that beautiful winter silhouette in another 9 months' time that I look at like I do right now and go, amazing, great job, well done. But I know that the next phase is, it's grunt work. It's the hard maintenance. It's the stuff we have to do. It's the stuff you can't turn your back on. I can't tell you how many deciduous trees that I see that you can see where something like pinching has started, and then it's got to be a bit too much, maybe because there's too many trees in the collection, whatever. Something else happens in the custodian's life, and they move away from bonsai being the number one focus, and you can then see the growth get away and become thick and coarse, especially on something like a Japanese maple. The longer it grows, the bigger the internodes become. The bigger the internodes, the more resources they get pushed there, so it gets too coarse and thick. Suddenly everything starts to grow out. The buds that are sitting there looking at you now that the tree's naked are massive. They're big and thick, and you compare that to areas that have been worked thoroughly in nice fine branches, nice fine buds, nice fine internodes, and you look at it and go, well, okay, that part that was allowed to grow, whether it's deliberate or not, it's got to get cut off because it doesn't work with the rest of the tree. It's now the tree's pumping so many resources to that area that it's got to be removed. It's got to be taken away because it's going to get too thick. Too much is going to grow through that area, and it's going to continue getting longer and longer, possibly at the expense of other areas of the tree. So, the point, the purpose, the intent of this section of the podcast is to say, as we head towards one of the most important maintenance periods for our trees, is embrace the maintenance. Give it a big warm cuddle and just say, I'm with you. I'm hunkering in. I know that I have to do this. I know that it's for the beauty of my tree. I know not all of this can be artistic design roses, and I know sometimes it's got to be this dirty, filthy work, because this dirty, filthy work that we do with our trees, that's bonsai for me. 100%. It's not taking a tree and shaping it. It's doing what the tree needs when the tree needs it to ensure that you can forever, in perpetuity, go on maintaining that tree to live for 1,000 years plus. So this is something that could potentially get passed down to your great-great-grandchildren, and they can be saying, hey, my whoever originally designed this tree, and it's been in our family, and we've got this burden, this anchor around our neck. No, they'll be wrapped. They won't see it as a burden. But this is what your focus should be. Whether it becomes a reality or not, that's somewhere in the future. But embracing and being completely satisfied and proud and content with a beautiful bonsai that you've created, knowing that there's not a lot of design work to be done with it. It's maintenance work that's got to be done with it. And appreciating that and embracing it and becoming part of your bonsai journey, your bonsai passage, that's the important part. And I can tell you that, having sore wrists like RSI from plucking nearly 1 million needles over the last 3 weeks, you've got to get up every morning and say, there's another tree there to be plucked. I love it. I love plucking needles. That's my mantra before I get out of bed. I love plucking needles. I love plucking needles, because if you don't, then there's no point. You can't have the. I thoroughly believe you can't have the good. You can't have the beautiful without the hard work, without the without the bonsai maintenance that we need to do for our trees. So with all this chat about loving maintenance work on our trees, I'll give you a little bit of an insight into me. I am a person that looks at a process and thinks all the time, how could this process be more efficient? And let's say it's putting nuts on bolts. It's okay. Well, if I start doing this way, is there a better way to do this? Could I line the bolts up and do it like this? And so these thoughts go through my head all the time about everything that I do. And I don't know, it's a bit of OCD really, that I've got to keep trying to improve and become more efficient. So when I've got a highly repetitive task, an example that comes to mind is putting cable ties onto the bags of soil that I've made up. By the time I start, making hundreds and hundreds of these things, when I start with a cable tie, I put it on a certain way, and then I think, could it be better if I did it like that? And so by the end of the process, I'm whipping them on as fast as I possibly can, and that doesn't seem like, it seems a bit weird, I suppose, when I say it out loud. But for me, when I've got a highly repetitive task, like needle plucking or pruning or root raking or whatever it is, whatever process that I'm going to go through, I think, is there a better way of doing this? And I try and refine it back. So, one, the job is ultra efficient. So it's achieving the objective as quickly as I possibly can. So I'm not stuck doing something forever. When talk about plucking needles, because that's what I've done a lot of lately. But when I'm plucking the needle, is it when I'm plucking the needle, am I breaking the needles? Am I tearing? Am I making sure that I'm getting them out in the fastest possible time? And it gets me thinking when I work with other people and I see how they pluck needles, and then I look at how I do it and I go, okay, so if you do it like this, then maybe there's a better way of doing it. And I want to give you a little bit of an insight into what I've found is a really highly efficient way of plucking needles. Thank God I've got my own podcast so I can talk about this stuff, because otherwise, no one would listen to me. But it makes a big difference, and it doesn't matter. You can use this for a lot of different things. But for me, I've found that when you hold your tweezers, right, there's 2 ways you can do it. One is where you grab it in your fist, right? So you make a fist and you sort of hold the tweezers in there, and you can sort of open and close it, and it's sort of sitting in the palm of your hand, the back of the tweezers, right? There's that way, which I find means that you've got to use the tweezers to the needles almost perpendicular, so you're sort of flicking your wrist, right? And in my experience, I've found that does a lot of damage to the needles and can often cause a lot of tearing, because that sort of arcing angle may not necessarily pull the needle out in the direction that it's growing. And that's the key to plucking needles, is pluck in the direction the needles are growing, because then you'll avoid the tearing. And if you avoid the tearing, then you leave any possible buds that are at the base intact. So the other technique that I like to use is where I have the tweezers in my hand, my dominant hand, sitting like a pair of chopsticks. So if you grab your tweezers like a pair of chopsticks, then it's very simple to have that angle straight into your head. And the image that I want to have in your mind right now is you might be driving your car, you might be in the middle of something else, you might be tapping away on your keyboard at work and have your AirPods in or your headphones on and just listening to the podcast. But the visual image that I want you to muster up, have your tweezers in your hand like a pair of chopsticks, and then think about how a chicken eats food off the ground, how it plucks. It goes forwards, backwards. Now, that's the technique that I would strongly recommend for plucking your needles, because what you're doing is you will grab the needles directly on and you will pull them straight back. So it's a fast movement that you can do quite repetitively. So it's just a backwards and forwards movement, and you're plucking like a chicken. And the other thing that I do is I will pluck one needle at a time. So rather than trying to grab a pair of needles, or if there's three, grabbing three needles, just grab one needle at a time, and you'll find that the needle releases from the sheath at the base that's connected to the branch a lot easier. And just leave the sheath there. I'm not interested in that. But when you're plucking, think about that chicken head eating off the ground, pluck, 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 pluck. So you want to be grabbing those needles and pulling back straight away. And now, the purpose of this section of the podcast is not to talk about how to use your tweezers on plucking needles, but it's to talk about the direction of your work. This is the super important part. So I wanted to cover off on that chicken head first, because you get the idea of how you're holding the tweezers, and that the chicken's going straight, your hands going backwards and forwards in a straight line. It's super important, no matter what you're doing with your trees, to focus in on the direction that you're working. So that will mean I love turntables. I love having my lift benches to get them to the right height, the trees. So I will sit down, stand up, whatever it is, and have that branch coming straight towards me. The exit angle it's got from the trunk of the bonsai, I will have that coming straight towards me. I will have it just below eye height, so I won't have it too high. I won't have it too low. I'll have it Goldilocks just right where I can look straight into the area that I'm working, and then I will work in a straight direction. So I know we've talked about plucking, but if you think about things like wiring, for me, that is the best angle at which to work on your branches when you're wiring, is have the branch flowing directly towards your stomach, towards your chest. Sit there and work it with your hands where those branches are flowing out in a straight line. So you will find that when you're looking down on the branch like that and it's coming straight towards you, the positioning of the wire to avoid crushing needles or leaf or other branches or buds or whatever it is becomes so much easier, because you've got that straight line of sight. You can see exactly where you're going to be placing the wire, and it becomes so much easier. When you're trying to wire or pluck or cut and something's on a side and you're looking in at it, you can't see the entirety of the branch. So you don't know what's on the other side. If you're, for instance, the branch is to your, you're looking at the front of the branch and it's flowing to the right-hand side, and you're trying to put wire on there across, you can't see the angle of the wire, the pitch of the wire that you're using, which is extremely important. You can't see what's on the other side of the branch to be crushed, and you just can't see how efficient and tight or neatly seated that wire is on the branch. So the direction that you're working makes a million times serious impact on the quality of the work that you're going to be achieving. So while I started with needle plucking, which if you think about it now, that chicken head, you want to be plucking those needles in the direction that they're growing. So by having that branch come around towards you and those needles are growing up towards your face, as your tweezers go down, and you grab, if you do it slowly and make sure this is correct, but as you go down with your tweezers and you grab that needle, then the needle should almost go right up the center of the tweezers. So rather than it sticking out to the one side or the other of the tweezers, the needle should almost be seated into the middle of those tweezers. That's when you've got it right. That's when the process works. That's when the damage is minimized. And you'll find that you'll get through it a hell of a lot faster than what you would if you were using the fist grabbing of tweezers. But it's not just that. It's when you're pruning things, when you're looking at when you're pruning your extremities of your pads, sitting there looking at the pad from the front rather than from a slightly elevated top-down view, you'll never get your pad shape exactly as what you want. So I've talked about perspective, but this is the direction of your work that you need to make sure is mindful. And that's, coming back again to the turntables, they make it so easy. You can have it where you can walk around the bench wherever the tree's sitting and focus on it that way. But for me, having a lifter that goes up and down and then having something sit on top of it that spins round and round and round means that I can at all times have it where the area that I'm working is in the perfect spot for me. Sometimes I need to stand up. Like I'm working on a big black pine at the moment where the lifter that I've got doesn't go down far enough because the tree's just too bloody big. So I've got a milk crate that I flip upside down and stand on top of that so I can get to work at the correct height. And you may need to make adjustments with whatever it is, but working where you're looking slightly down on the area and it's flowing directly towards your body and you're working with your hands coming back towards you is such an efficient way, and it's the correct way of working on the trees. If you look at sometimes you'll go to things like a demonstration, you'll see someone working and they'll be working from the side of the trees. I do it a hell of a lot when I'm doing things, but that's because I get to show people what's getting done. Whereas when I'm working by myself, or I'm working on a in a situation where I'm not considering what other people can see, I always have it where that direction of work is back towards my torso, to my body, and I'm slightly elevated above it, and I can see exactly what's happening in there. So don't maybe look at YouTube videos or see how someone's done and go, oh, that's the way to do it, because I think that you'll get greater control. You'll be far more efficient. You'll do a damn sight less damage to whatever it is that you're working on by working that way. And if you're wiring sort of two branches, you start at one, have that coming towards you, and then as you finish that branch, spin it around and then work the other branch so it's coming towards you as well. You don't need to. It's not a static position that you're working on with your tree. That's the get up and move around and make sure that you can thoroughly see what you're going to do and make sure that it's all going to work. Anyway, hopefully that helps, and hopefully that visual image you'll have of a chicken eating while you're plucking your needles will give you some kind of clarity and maybe something new to try when you're next in front of one of your pines. But yeah, anyway, direction of working. It's a little thing. I talk about 1%ers with your trees. This is more than that. This is an approach to working on your trees, I think, that will make a big difference always. Work with it coming direct towards you, then rotate it around and look at the work that you've done. But that direction of working will make a massive difference. Now, I was extremely fortunate to recently be working at the National Bonsai and Pension Collection of Australia up in Canberra, a place that is brilliant. If you have not been there and you're within Australia, put it on the list. Not just the collection that's there, which does rotate, it does change. Trees come and go, so it's always worth a revisit. But it's the whole area, the arboretum, the trees, the environment. What's been put together in that area in Canberra is truly special, and not just for now. I do say to a lot of people that I think in 1,000 years' time it'll be absolutely incredible. Once some of these forests that have been planted up there mature and get to third and fourth generation trees in there as well, it's just going to be such a brilliant place. So I'm sort of hoping that I come back in my future life as a bird that gets to spend its time up in that area of the world, because it's such a lovely place. But while I was there working on some incredible trees and doing lots of different things, I come across all the time the volunteers that are up there. And now I take my hat off to anyone who volunteers for anything, because you're being selfless with what you do. But if you're volunteering to do something for the good of bonsai, then I take my hat off and I bow to you. seriously, because what's good for bonsai is good for us all. And I got to hear a lot of conversations that these volunteers have with the tourists, the people, the visitors that come in to look at our beautiful national bonsai collection that we have. And you're special people. If you're listening to this podcast, I seriously, hand on heart, say thank you very much, because you are doing so much for the good of bonsai within Australia that it's admirable. And I seriously love you all for it. The way that you talk about and respect the trees and the heritage of those trees, it's brilliant. If you've got a tree up in the National Collection, if you've had a tree up in the National Collection, if you've got a relative that's done it, then I think it's something that I've always said that we should all aim for as part of our process, if it's possible, of course. Based on where you live in Australia, you may not be able to do it, but it's the way that gets through and builds a fascination and love and care and respect for these beautiful trees in pots. It's unbelievable. So thank you very much to all the volunteers at the NBPCA, because you seriously mean the world to me. Anyway, enough said. We're rolling in towards the end of the June period, very, very close. So from July for me commences that repotting period, and that will be the focus going forward. So I've still got more pines to work my way through, of course, but we're getting to almost the close of one chapter and getting ready for another one. So I'm not gonna say it. Well, I will say it, but if you're not prepared for repotting, then you've got to pluck your finger out now, because it's almost go time. Give your trees a big, beautiful cuddle for me. The winter silhouette of these trees looks amazing. It is just absolutely spectacular. Plan for what's going to happen in spring with the trees as well. Look at them. Is that too thick? Is that too long? Is that too coarse? Can I remove this? Should I wire this? Should I shape that? Because that late winter period for your deciduous is a really nice time to get in and do that work just before they sort of start growing again, as it gets a little bit warmer and the daylight hours are longer and spring's coming. So it's a nice time to finalise your plans and preparations for what's about to come. Anyway, thanks for listening, and as always, subscribers, love you. Thank you very much. Until next time, as always, happy bonsai.